I thought this meeting was a promotion. It was actually a silent execution. My name is Ben Trask. I'm 41 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. And until that morning, I thought I was about to become Director of Operations at Vantive Labs. It was a Tuesday early. I had even worn a blazer, which I hated. But something told me today was going to be important. Either a big step forward or, well, I hadn't really considered the alternative. That was my mistake. When I walked into Mark's office, he didn't look up. He was behind his desk, scrolling through his tablet, probably checking the Slack channels I built. He didn't say good morning, didn't ask me to sit. Instead, he hit me with it immediately. You're no longer a fit here. That's the first thing out of his mouth. No greeting, no handshake, just those words, delivered like they were part of a script he'd rehearsed. I blinked. Excuse me? He finally looked up, but not at me. More like past me, like this whole conversation was just a box to check. We're evolving, Ben. The brand is shifting. The culture's changing. This is about alignment, not performance. He gestured vaguely, like the air around him held meaning. Then he dropped the name. Alina will be stepping into a newly shaped role, one that better reflects where we're headed. My stomach tightened. Alina. 8 months ago, she was asking me how to log into the analytics dashboard. Now she was apparently stepping into a role shaped just for her. A role I didn't even know existed. A role that, based on timing, looked a hell of a lot like the one I was aiming for. I sat down anyway. Didn't ask permission. Just to be clear, I said, keeping my voice even. Am I being fired? Mark didn't answer directly. He started talking about transitions, about how startups go through phases, about letting go of legacy systems, which I realized with a jolt was a euphemism. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a legacy system. He used every corporate cliche in the book: bandwidth, recalibration, voice realignment. I barely heard it. My pulse was loud in my ears. I should have spoken up, should have pushed back. Instead, I just sat there while he slowly wrote me out of the company I helped build. You know, I said finally, I was employee number 2. Mark gave a polite, distracted nod. Of course. We didn't have chairs, remember that? He smiled faintly. We've come a long way. I stared at him. The version of this guy from 10 years ago wouldn't have worn that watch, wouldn't have had a $200 haircut or a standing desk that adjusted with an app. He wouldn't have done this either, this kind of quiet dismissal dressed up in branding jargon. He used to look me in the eye. Alina's very talented, he added, and she gets the brand's new tone. That word again. Tone. I helped build that tone. I set up the org chart, defined the workflows. I was the one who told Mark to stop saying synergy in pitch meetings, back when investors still had to Google our name. He was pitch, I was framework. That was always the deal. He stood up, just like that. The meeting was over. We'll give you space to transition, he said, already walking to the door. No hard feelings. As I walked out, I caught a glimpse of the whiteboard behind his desk. It still had my handwriting on it, a bulleted list of quarterly goals I'd mapped out 3 weeks ago. I walked past the reception desk, past the LED wall that looped our mission statement, past the glass conference room where I once stayed until midnight, debugging a scheduling bug. It felt like the whole place had swallowed me and moved on before I finished digesting. But what Mark forgot, or maybe never knew, was that legally he just tried to fire the one man who actually owns the company. He forgot the garage, the heater under my desk, the day we signed the paperwork. He forgot who signed it, and that was going to be a problem. For him. People talk about humble beginnings like it's some badge of honor, but ours wasn't humble. It was humiliating. The company started in a busted-out auto garage that still smelled like burnt brake fluid. Marcus's old place, his uncle's shop or something, hadn't seen a real mechanic in years, but it had 4 walls, a ceiling, and electrical outlets that didn't spark too often. That was enough. Back then, it was just me and Mark. No HR, no legal team, no custom Slack emojis. Just 2 guys and a rolling whiteboard we bought off Craigslist for $15. Mark had the pitch, I had the system. That was always the split. He could sell anything to anyone. But once the checks cleared, someone had to make the product work. make the promises real. That was me. He'd pace around that garage like it was a TED stage, hyping up imaginary investors. I'd be hunched over a folding table writing the first build scripts, trying to keep the space heater from shorting out the router. We had one working bathroom, no insulation. My hands were cracked for weeks from typing in fingerless gloves. The first prototype ran off my old laptop, rigged to a server box we salvaged off eBay. And when that crashed, which it did constantly, I'd crawl under the table and reboot it manually, usually while Mark was on the phone telling some angel investor that our infrastructure was robust. He wasn't lying exactly, just future-facing. But the real setup, the part that still matters, happened in that second week, the day we needed to file the incorporation docs. Mark looked uneasy when I brought it up, said there were some complications with his name being on the registration, something about a non-compete tied to his old firm. Legal stuff. Gray area, but not worth the risk, he said. Let's just use your name for now, he told me. Get it filed. We'll update it later. We never did. At the time, it felt like a formality. We were nobodies with an idea, working out of a garage that smelled like rust and regret. We had no customers, no revenue, barely even a working product. But I signed the forms. I filed the LLC. I paid the $105 filing fee out of my own pocket. Mark didn't even ask. He shook my hand like I'd just done him a favor. Clean and simple, he said. Until we get real funding. And then we forgot about it. Or rather, he forgot. I just didn't bring it up. Because things move fast. Within 6 months, we had a beta version. By month 9, we'd landed a pilot deal with a small media platform that needed our automation tool. By the time we hit year 2, we had real traction, revenue, a seed round, even interns. The garage became a co-working space, then a loft office with plants we never watered. Mark started getting invites to speak at panels. I stopped writing code and started managing teams. Somewhere in that chaos, the paperwork got buried, and it stayed buried. I handled the ops, the vendor contracts, the hiring docs, the investor updates. Mark was the voice, the face of the company. But I was the spine. Quiet, steady, under the surface. He once called me the machine in the basement, meant it as a compliment. I should have known then. Because even as the team grew, even when we hit our first million, Mark never brought up the ownership. Not once. It was like the company had evolved past that early messiness, and we were just co-founders now, equal in everything that mattered. Except we weren't. There was still one document, just one, a quiet little form that said, in no uncertain terms, Ben Trask owns 100% of Vantive Labs. I didn't sign it to protect myself. I signed it to protect what we were building. Mark was a risk. Talented, yes, but reckless. He needed freedom to pitch, to move fast, to charm money out of rooms full of people. I needed security. A name on a line, something solid, something legal. It wasn't about power. Back then, I didn't think I'd ever need to use it. But now that document might be the only thing keeping me in the fight. While Mark was out there pitching dreams, I signed the one piece of paper that could still wake him up in a cold sweat. And he doesn't even know it. Not yet. But he will. It didn't happen all at once. First, it was just an email I didn't get CC'd on. A product roadmap I had helped sketch out, gone over in the Monday sync, got pushed live without my name anywhere on it. I figured it was an oversight. Then a project I'd been leading for 6 months suddenly had a new team lead. I hadn't assigned her. I hadn't even heard about the change. I asked around. Everyone played dumb. We thought it was a restructure, one manager said. Didn't Mark tell you? No, Mark hadn't told me anything. I tried to brush it off. Teams get reshuffled all the time. It's a startup. You can't take it personally. Then I opened our internal dashboard, the one I'd helped build, and saw half the folders were gone, not just moved. Of course. Gone. The other half were marked read only. I clicked my admin profile, or tried to. It redirected to a login error. I pinged IT. A guy named Jordan answered. He was good, sharp, reliable, I'd hired him right out of school. He used to bring me cold brew in those first few weeks, always eager to learn. He looked different now. When my face popped up on his screen, he blinked like he'd seen a ghost. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone casual. "Something's up with my access. Can you check?" He hesitated. Yeah. Sure. One sec." His fingers danced across the keyboard. Then he frowned. His eyes flicked back and forth. He looked nervous. "You okay?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "Yeah, just your profile's marked inactive." "Inactive?" I echoed. "Like I'm on leave?" He didn't answer. "Jordan," I said, sharper now. "Inactive how?" He exhaled, glancing around like someone might be watching. "Just says legacy account. There was a request to clean up old credentials. So I didn't know it was..." He stopped talking, shut his mouth like he'd already said too much. Who made the request? He wouldn't say. I thanked him and closed the window. My pulse was high, but my face was still calm. That was the first rule in this game. Don't show panic until you know the score. I clicked over to the meeting calendar. My name was gone, not just from one invite, from all of them. I wasn't on next week's budget sync, not on the Q3 strategy call, not on the Monday stand-ups. The meetings I led, gone. My whole team was still listed, even the new intern. But me, like I'd quit. I sat back in my chair and stared at the monitor. The same monitor I'd used for 1,000 late nights. The same one where I'd drafted our first vendor pipeline, balanced our earliest budgets, troubleshot a data outage at 3 a.m. because no one else knew where the log files were. I clicked into our org chart. Under operations, there was a blank spot where my face used to be, like a glitch, or like someone had hit delete. The funny thing is, you can smell when you're being replaced. You don't want to believe it. At first you think it's a mistake and some admin shuffle, a permissions error. But then it keeps happening. The silence gets louder, the invitations stop, the credits disappear. You walk into a room and the conversation dies. People stop asking your opinion, not because they disagree, but because they've been told not to care. You become the ghost of a role that no longer exists. Legacy. That's the word Jordan used. Legacy account. Not Ben, not founder, not builder, not architect of the thing. They all now walk around pretending they invented. Just legacy. They didn't even fire me properly. They just started pulling out wires until I didn't exist. No announcement. No thank you. No exit memo. Just silence. The kind you get when people are afraid to look you in the eye. The kind you only hear when they've already decided you're gone, and they're just waiting for you to realize it. Well, now I spent 3 weeks building that proposal. 3 weeks of early mornings, late nights, weekends in the office while everyone else was out, pretending we weren't sprinting toward a product collapse. It wasn't just PowerPoint fluff either. It was structural, operational. It was a real plan for scaling our chaos into something sustainable. A new reporting flow, a restructure of the internal tooling stack, hiring cadence, cross-team dependencies, burn rate versus headcount charts. The whole thing, smart, clean, executable. And it was mine. I wasn't building it for applause. I was building it because someone had to. Because while Mark was busy playing startup CEO on LinkedIn, someone still needed to make sure we didn't run out of money or morale. I had dropped hints, asked for time on the next exec sync, kept it quiet until it was polished. Then I slid it to Mark's assistant with a short note. COO transition proposal. Trask. No reply. 4 days passed. I figured maybe he didn't read it, or maybe he did and hated it. Either way, I braced myself for a brush-off. Instead, I got a company-wide email. The subject line was so chipper, I almost missed it. Excited to announce our new Chief Operating Officer, Alina Miles. I reread it twice. Then I opened the attachment. Alina's 90-day operational plan. My hand froze on the mouse. It was mine, not just vaguely inspired by. No, it was a copy-paste job. Same structure, same slide titles, even the sub-bullet on projected burnout risk by Q2, a line I'd written in a moment of personal honesty, now casually presented in her insightful strategic analysis. I scrolled faster. The org chart, My org chart. The staggered onboarding sequence I designed for the new ops roles. My colors, my notes, my phrasing. Even the title on the bottom corner still had my initials in the slide master. DADIDS-BT 3.2. I stared at it, jaw tight, heart cold. And then Slack lit up. Wow, big move. Alina's crushing it already. Love the direction she's taking us. Even Jared, the intern I'd mentored last year, messaged me. Honestly thought it was gonna be you, man. You okay? At 10:40, Alina walked over to my desk. She had that corporate concern look on her face, eyebrows tilted just right, lips in that small pity curve, a mask built in an HR lab. I know this must be weird, she said. Weird? I wanted to ask if she'd ever heard the term intellectual theft. I wanted to drag her through each slide and ask her if she even understood what a cross-functional roadmap was before I explained it to her. But I didn't say any of that. I just smiled. The kind of smile you give a stranger at a stoplight. Empty. Brief. Painless. She tapped my desk lightly like we were old friends, then walked off in her new heels to the welcome lunch the company was throwing in her honor. I sat there a while, staring at nothing. Then I opened my laptop and started copying folders. Not to destroy them, not to leak anything, not even to prove a point, just to keep a record. A private trail. Because for the first time, I stopped trusting my own company. Not just Mark, not just Alina, all of it. I copied contracts, schedules, onboarding docs I'd created, expense spreadsheets, meeting recordings, old pitch decks with my comments still in the margins, backups of the dashboard I'd designed before they stripped my access. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I needed proof, not for anyone else, but for myself, to remind me that I had actually built something here, that it hadn't all been some delusion, that somewhere inside this sleek machine with its mood boards and branded Slack emojis, I had once mattered. She got the job, she also got my work, my title, my silence. But she didn't get my memory, and soon Mark was going to remember something too, something I never should have forgotten, something he never knew, that buried document with one name on it, mine. I didn't want drama, not anymore, not even a goodbye speech. I just wanted to leave like I came in, quietly, with my sleeves rolled up. So I drafted a short farewell email. Nothing fancy, just, thank you for the journey, wishing you all the best moving forward. I attached a few transition notes for the ops team, linked the handover doc I'd written, even though no one asked for it, and hovered over the send button. Click.error message. Message blocked by admin. I stared at the screen, thinking it was a glitch. Tried again. This time, plain text. No formatting, no subject line, not even a signature. Blocked. They'd locked down my outbound email. Not just revoked access. No, that would have been protocol. They went one step further. They erased my exit. I should have expected it. I had already been locked out of our dashboard, had my folders stripped. My profile marked as inactive. But this was different. This was final. I sat there for a while, just breathing, watching the blue light from the monitor flick across the desk I'd sat at for 10 years. Then I stood up. No one noticed. The office buzzed like always. Keyboards clacking, Alina laughing a little too loudly at something in conference room. D.I. glanced at the glass wall beside me. My reflection looked tired, hollow-eyed. Not defeated, just done. I packed slowly. Just the essentials. My notebook, a few cables, the pen my wife gave me after our first year in business. A photo of me and Marcus in front of the garage, back when our desks were milk crates and optimism. Nobody said a word. Nobody asked where I was going. Even the people I'd hired, coached, promoted, stuck up for in budget reviews, avoided eye contact, like if they looked at me too long, they'd get erased too. I walked down the main corridor past the LED wall we installed last year, big and glossy, rotating through company quotes and headshots. We build with empathy. Leadership is legacy. Celebrate the climb. There were new photos on the screen, fresh faces, big smiles, no picture of me. As I passed the lobby, I heard someone laugh. A junior designer. I didn't know her name, but I remembered approving her referral bonus. She was pointing at Alina's new headshot on the display. Someone asked, "Where's Ben's shot?" Without missing a beat, she answered, "Guess they only show the people who still matter." I didn't flinch. I just pushed open the front doors and stepped outside into the overcast morning. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Michael, my attorney. Michael, "You'll want to come in." I pulled the original ownership file. Nothing's changed, 2 sentences, that's all. For a second, I just stood there on the sidewalk, holding my bag. The wind tugged at my jacket. Somewhere behind me, the glass doors clicked shut. They thought they'd buried me. But they forgot to check the foundation. I wasn't just some legacy account. I was the guy whose name still sat, unchallenged, on the original deed. Ben Trask. Owner. Michael hadn't changed much, still wore the same tweed jackets with the elbow patches, still drank too much black coffee, still didn't believe in digital safes. We met at his office that afternoon. The building was quiet. A converted craftsman with floors that creaked and a receptionist who knew me by name, even though I hadn't been there in over a decade. He brought me into the back, same as he had the first time, years ago, when we were just 2 broke guys trying to figure out how to get a company registered before the weekend. "Still have it," he said, patting the tall black filing cabinet in the corner. "You never asked for a scan." Guess that was smart. He pulled open the bottom drawer, then reached behind a stack of old leases and printouts, and finally slid out a manila folder. He placed it on the table like it was made of glass. It was thicker than I remembered. He opened it. There it was. Ben Trask, a sole signatory, 100% legal owner. No amendments, no transfers, no silent handshake deals, no buried updates. Just my name, my signature, dated and notarized. "You never filed the conversion," he said, flipping to the final page. "You were supposed to move it to dual ownership after that first round, but you never did." "No one asked me to." He smiled, thin and knowing. "Well, that's a hell of a thing." I exhaled quietly. It didn't feel like triumph. Not yet. It felt like the moment before something shifts, before gravity resets and everything that's been up starts coming down. Then he pulled out something else, a fresh document, printed from email, legal size, signature page folded. "This came across my desk yesterday," he said, laying it in front of me. "It's a vendor licensing agreement, $9 million, strategic tech partnership. You didn't sign it." I didn't need to read far to know what he was saying. Mark had been authorizing high-dollar contracts in the company's name, but legally, he didn't have the authority. He wasn't even a manager under the original registration. He was just an officer of a company whose ownership never legally changed hands. "Me. None of these deals are enforceable," Michael said. "Not without your signature. You could collapse 3 of them right now with a single letter." I nodded slowly. I wasn't mad, I wasn't even surprised. I was just ready. This was the part Mark never bothered to learn, the part no branding workshop or TED Talk could prepare him for. When he tried to cut me loose, he thought he was firing a cog, a legacy system, a man past his prime. But what he'd actually done, and this is the beautiful irony, was try to fire the one person who still owns the company. He built the empire, but I still hold the deed. Michael looked at me. "So, what do you want to do?" I closed the folder, carefully. Looked out the window. The street was quiet, the sky gray. Portland in October. I looked back at him. We start with a letter. Michael drafted the letter that night. It wasn't dramatic. No threats, no legalese fireworks. No, just a clean, quiet memo with 3 paragraphs and one unmistakable fact at the center. I am the sole legal owner of Vantive Labs, Inc. We sent it to the board and legal counsel via certified mail. And for good measure, Michael encrypted and delivered a digital copy directly to the company inboxes of the executive team, including Mark. No subject line games, no demand for reinstatement, just a statement of fact and a request to initiate a formal ownership review under state compliance protocols. At 10:06 a.m. the next morning, we got our first reply. Mark, of course, except he didn't reply to me. He replied to everyone, and he accidentally CC'd Michael's assistant. Subject line, We have a situation. That's all I needed to see. I didn't open the email, didn't have to. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice the second I answered. Ben. It's Stephen Rains. Stephen was one of our earliest investors, a guy who rarely surfaced, not unless something serious was happening. I read the letter, he said. I waited. Is it true? Yes. Silence. Just a breath. Then, every word? Every single one. Another pause. I could hear wind in the background. Maybe he was outside, walking one of those manicured golf course trails he always pretended not to care about. He spoke again, quieter this time. You remember my daughter interned with you in 16? Yeah, I said. Rachel? She said you were the only one who gave her a real task, helped her prep for grad school. She still talks about that. I remember. Stephen's tone shifted. Lighter, calmer, but focused. You don't need to yell, he said. You already shook the tower. I didn't say anything. Just give it space, he added. The right people are already reading. That was the thing about power. It didn't need to show up with flags and sirens. Sometimes it came in a plain white envelope and sat quietly until someone opened it. I didn't burn the house down. I just reminded them who poured the concrete. And behind the scenes, the cracks were already forming. I could feel it. I knew how fast panic travels through a boardroom when ownership is in question, especially if contracts might collapse, especially when investors feel like they've been lied to. That night, I got 3 more calls I didn't answer. One was from a blocked number, one from Alina, and the last was from Mark. He left a voicemail. It was short. Ben, we need to talk. He didn't sound angry, he sounded winded, like someone had finally looked up from their empire and realized the ground wasn't as solid as they thought. At 8:59 a.m., I stepped through the front doors of Vantive Labs for the second time that month. But this time, I wasn't carrying a laptop bag or wondering who'd remove my access. I wasn't asking for a meeting. I wasn't looking for closure. This time, I came back with authority. On either side of me walked Michael and a state compliance officer named Dana. Calm, quiet, clipboard in hand, body language like she'd done this 50 times and expected it to go badly 30 of them. Maria at the front desk didn't blink. She just looked up, stood immediately, and said, "Good morning, Mr. Trask." Not Ben. Not a confused, "Can I help you?" Mr. Trask. She knew. The elevator ride to the 12th floor was silent. I stared straight ahead, watching the floor numbers tick upward. Dana tapped her pen once against the clipboard. Michael adjusted his cufflinks, the same way he always did when he was about to walk into a boardroom with teeth. The elevator doors opened, and there it was. The same floor they'd gutted me on. Same walls, same lighting, same corner plant, slowly dying in the hallway. We didn't stop at reception. We walked straight to conference room B. The glass doors were closed, but you could already feel the ripple through the floor. Slack messages flying, someone whispering, "He's here." Chairs shifting, people looking busy. Mark was standing at the head of the table when we walked in. He smiled. The kind of smile that wants to say one thing and erase the past, but forgets the past is still holding receipts. We were going to reach out, he said. Too late. Michael handed Dana the documentation and took a seat. I set a slim folder on the table, flipped it open, and placed the incorporation papers front and center. Mark glanced at them, his expression tightening for a moment before he pulled his face back into neutral. "These are old," he said. "Unchanged," I replied. "No transfers, no assignments. Filed, notarized, and stored by legal counsel since day one." Dana sat forward and started reading aloud, article after article, the full filing history, the authority structure, ownership clauses. Her voice was steady, objective. She wasn't here for sides. She was here for facts. Mark tried to interrupt halfway through. "We've moved past that structure." Dana held up a hand without even looking at him. "This is a compliance inquiry. Please hold comments until the review is complete." It was like watching a man who thought he ran the show slowly realize he was just another actor. And the script had changed. I turned the page and laid out the vendor contracts. Deals Mark had signed under my authority. Deals that, if challenged, would fall apart in court. Michael spoke calmly. "These are material violations under your current operating agreement." The board has not been informed of these risks. This opens Vantive Labs to significant liability. A pin could have dropped. Nobody moved. And then came the final surprise. "I'd like to add something," said a voice from the far end of the table. Claire, board member since 2018, all cashmere and caution, was staring at Mark. "I've known about the original ownership papers for over a year." Everyone turned to look at her. "What?" Mark said. She didn't flinch. "You told me you'd handle it. You didn't." He looked stunned. A beat of silence passed, the kind of silence that splits boardrooms. I looked at Dana. She nodded. And for the first time in weeks I smiled, not out of satisfaction, but out of finality. He'd erased me with 8 words. Now I was back with 2. "Let's begin." It didn't take long after the documents hit the table. Marianne was the first to speak. Sharp, direct, no hesitation. I motioned to suspend Mark's executive authority pending full ownership review and compliance audit. No throat clearing, no small talk. Just clean, boardroom legal. Another member, a younger guy named Dev I barely knew, seconded it without looking up from the dock in front of him. That was it. Just like that, Mark was legally sidelined. He didn't speak at first. He blinked, then leaned forward like he was still the one running the meeting, like he could talk his way through it. "You can't be serious," he said finally, laughing a little too hard. "You're going to suspend me because Ben walked in here with a paper from a decade ago?" He looked around, searching for someone to back him up. Claire didn't meet his eyes, neither did Dev. Marianne stared him down like a school principal who'd heard every excuse. I stayed quiet. Mark's laugh died in his throat. He turned to Dana, the compliance officer, who was now sealing the meeting transcript into an envelope. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Ben can't just walk back in here like this." Dana didn't even look up. "That's not your call." Then Claire finally opened her mouth, and her words stung more than mine ever could. "You said you'd handle it, Mark. You didn't." Mark's face turned red. "I built this company. I built this." I finally looked at him. "No," I said. "Calm. You pitched it. I built it." He opened his mouth again, but I didn't let him speak. "You erased me, quietly, strategically. No confrontation, no HR process. Just a disappearing act. You didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face until the end." He shook his head, waving his hand like he was brushing away a mosquito. "You're blowing this up. You're making it into a war." "No," I said. "You started a war the second you tried to fire the one person who actually owned the company." He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Not anger, not ego, fear. He had bluffed his way past 1,000 rooms. But the bluff didn't work anymore, because I wasn't there for applause. I wasn't there to scream or get revenge. I was there to restore clarity. "This isn't retaliation," I said. "It's rectification." And then I stood up. Michael followed. Dana gathered her files and sealed the envelope with her initials. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. Mark was still sitting, shoulders hunched. No longer the face of a brand, just another man who flew too close to the sun on someone else's wings. The compliance officer clicked the door closed behind us. No fanfare, no applause. Just the sound of power shifting back into the hands of the person who had it all along. I came in early, not to make a statement, not for power, just because that's what I'd always done. The parking lot was quiet. The lobby still smelled faintly of fresh carpet glue from the last renovation I'd approved. The security guard nodded as I scanned my old badge, the one IT never fully deactivated because no one had officially removed me from the system. The elevator ride felt different this time. Not heavy, not anxious, just steady, still. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, nobody clapped. No welcome party, no whispered congratulations, no awkward attempts at small talk. Just a clean office, same floor plan, same walls. A few new plants, slightly too plastic looking. Someone had repainted the kitchenette. Someone else had taken down the old frame prototype schematic I'd drawn back in the garage days. But my desk was still there. Same spot, same chair, same scuff mark on the corner where I used to hook my bag. There was a new plaque on the desk, simple brushed metal, no frills. Benjamin Trask, founding owner. I sat down, opened my laptop, and logged in without trouble. Someone had reinstated my access, maybe yesterday, maybe at midnight. My inbox was full. Not chaos, no blowback, no all-hands escalation. Just quiet apologies. Didn't know what was really going on. Wish I'd reached out sooner. Sorry for how that was handled. I replied to every one of them, not with anger, just with something honest and short. Appreciate your message. Let's move forward. At 8:12, Alina walked past my door. She glanced in, hesitated, then kept going without a word. Her steps were too careful. She wasn't used to being uncertain. I didn't call after her. Across the hall, someone was whispering. I couldn't tell if it was about me or just morning chatter. Either way, I didn't care. I wasn't here to win a popularity contest. I was here because I still believed in what we built, not the logo, not the glossy version with the slogans and the rooftop mixers, but the real thing, the machine in the basement, the systems, the integrity. I clicked open the ops dashboard. Everything still made sense. The guts of the company, my framework, still held. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel since before Alina, before the erasure, before Mark decided I didn't fit the tone. I felt peace, not revenge, not satisfaction, just quiet. Like the storm had passed, there would be fallout. Reviews, restructures, long meetings with lawyers and auditors and board members who would want answers in soft voices and long bullet lists. But that could wait. Because today, I was back where I belonged. No applause, just the desk, the plaque, the facts, and me.